During the dinner I organized with some friends, the one who never pays showed up for the celebration, but I had a plan. My name is Nicole, and I need to tell you this story. I'm 28 years old. I work at a digital marketing company for 2 years. And until recently, I was one of those people who always avoid conflict. You know that type who prefers to swallow frogs rather than create confusion? That was me. But some situations in life force us to show who we really are underneath this facade of a nice person. It all started when Tiffany arrived at the company. She was 31 years old, impeccable blonde hair, always well-dressed, and a confidence that I secretly envied. On her first day, I remember thinking, what an elegant woman. If I had known what was coming. The first signs were subtle. During the welcome lunch we organized for her, when the bill arrived and everyone started calculating their share, Tiffany suddenly became very busy on her phone. "Oh, guys, sorry, it's my mom calling with an emergency," she said, leaving hurriedly. "Can you divide for me? I'll transfer later." Of course she never transferred. The following week, during a happy hour, the same thing. Tiffany ordered 3 expensive cocktails, went to the bathroom when it was time to pay, and came back saying her card had a system problem. Lucas, who was always too kind for his own good, ended up paying her share. I watched all this with a mixture of disbelief and admiration for her audacity. How does someone manage to do this without feeling shame? And most impressive, she did it with a naturalness that almost convinced you it was coincidence. The pattern repeated for months. Tiffany always found a creative excuse at the H hour. "I forgot my wallet in the car. My bank app is down. I just received an emergency call." And always with that sincere expression, as if it really was her bad luck. Meanwhile, I noticed she drove a brand new Audi, used bags that cost more than my monthly salary, and always had her nails done at those expensive salons downtown. Her desk at the office was always full of shopping bags from stores I only knew by sight. During group lunches, she invariably forgot her wallet or received an urgent call precisely when the bill arrived. At after-work happy hours, she always ordered the most expensive drinks, but mysteriously needed to rush out before settling accounts, promising to transfer later, something that never happened. After 6 months observing this behavior, I began to realize it wasn't just coincidence or bad luck. It was a well-planned system. Tiffany had turned into art the ability to exploit colleagues' goodwill, always taking advantage of our politeness and reluctance to create conflict. The most irritating thing is that she didn't seem to have real financial problems. On the contrary, she lived flaunting a lifestyle that most of us only dreamed of. It was clear she simply didn't want to pay when she could make others pay for her. I started mentally documenting each incident, each lame excuse, each broken promise. Without knowing that soon I would have the perfect opportunity to use all this information, the truth is I was starting to feel like an idiot for allowing this to continue happening. Not just with me, but seeing her do this to genuinely good people like Lucas, who works hard to support his sick mother, or Zoe, who had just moved and was trying to establish herself in the city. One day, during another group lunch, I watched Tiffany execute her usual performance. This time she had ordered the most expensive dish on the menu, a grilled salmon for $45, while the rest of us opted for more affordable options. When it came time to pay, she received an urgent call from the dentist and had to rush out. "Guys, sorry. My dentist said my root canal is inflaming and I need to go right now," she announced dramatically, already grabbing her purse. "Can you guys divide for me? I promise I'll transfer today." Of course she didn't transfer, and worse. The following Monday, she was flaunting a new cut and hair color that clearly cost more than $300. When someone complimented it, she responded casually, "Oh, I went to my usual salon. This weekend I also took advantage and did hydration, eyebrow design, and nails. I need to take care of myself, right?" It was at that moment I understood it wasn't a matter of money for emergencies. It was a matter of priorities. For Tiffany, taking care of appearance was mandatory investment. But paying her share in outings with colleagues was dispensable. After all, there was always someone to cover for her. The last straw came on a Tuesday in October that I'll never forget. It was Zoe's birthday, our 25-year-old graphic designer. She's one of those genuinely sweet people, came from Oregon a few months ago and was still adapting to big city life. To celebrate, she brought a tray of her grandmother's special brownies. "It's a family recipe," she explained, all proud, while uncovering the tray in the break room. "Belgian imported chocolate and pecan nuts that my grandmother sends from Oregon. She always made them when I was a child on my birthdays." You could see on her face how much that meant. The care she put into waking up at 5 in the morning to make something special to share with us. The tray was beautifully arranged with 12 perfectly cut brownies, each decorated with a pecan nut on top. Zoe had even placed a handwritten card. "Thank you for making my first year here so special." Tiffany arrived late that day, as always. When she saw the brownies in the break room, she simply devoured half the tray before other colleagues could try them. I was getting coffee when I saw the scene, her eating one after another, as if she owned them, not even bothering to read Zoe's little card. When Zoe arrived in the room to call everyone and saw that only 4 brownies remained for a team of 15 people, her face completely fell apart. "Tiffany," she said delicately, still trying to maintain composure, "I had made them for everyone to try. They were for us to celebrate together." Tiffany's response left me speechless, and was the moment I realized she wasn't just opportunistic but genuinely cruel. "Oh, sorry, but they were kind of dry anyway," she said, licking her fingers theatrically. "You should use a better recipe next time. Maybe less flour. And this chocolate seems to be one of those cheap ones from the supermarket." I saw tears forming in Zoe's eyes. She had spent more than $100 on imported ingredients, had woken up in the middle of the night, and had still been publicly humiliated. Other colleagues started arriving in the room at that moment, and the situation became even more embarrassing when they realized what had happened. "Wow, Zoe, what delicious brownies," said Marcus, trying to grab one of the few that remained. "Did you make these?" "Yes," Zoe responded with a choked voice. "But I think they didn't turn out very good." It was at that moment something inside me changed forever. It wasn't about money or restaurant bills anymore. It was about basic respect, about human decency, about protecting good people from predators like Tiffany. She had crossed a line I didn't even know existed until I saw it being crossed so cruelly and unnecessarily. A week after the brownie incident, Tiffany's behavior reached a new level of lowness that I couldn't imagine being possible. We had agreed to order Hawaiian food for a group lunch at the office. It was a Friday, and everyone was excited to relax a bit after a tough week. Lucas had carefully chosen a special poke bowl with salmon and tuna, the most expensive on the menu, which cost almost $40. For him, who was always very controlled with expenses, that represented a small luxury he rarely allowed himself. I remember him commenting, "Only once a month I give myself this gift." When the food arrived, Lucas was on an important call with a client from the West Coast. It was a negotiation he had been working on for 3 weeks to close a 6-month contract, so he couldn't simply hang up. He made a gesture to everyone indicating it would be quick, and left his food on the kitchen table, along with the others. Tiffany saw his poke bowl on the table and, without any ceremony, took it and started eating. It wasn't an innocent mistake. She looked around, saw that no one was paying attention, and simply appropriated the most expensive food that had been ordered. When Lucas finally managed to end the call 15 minutes later and returned to get his lunch, he found only the empty container in the trash. "Tiffany, that was my poke bowl," he said, still trying to process what had happened, pointing to the container she had thrown away. "Oh, I thought it was mine," she responded, without stopping chewing, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "It was just a misunderstanding." "But you didn't even order a poke bowl," Lucas insisted, visibly trying to stay calm. "You ordered quinoa salad. It's there on the table with your name on the container." Tiffany shrugged with an indifference that was almost impressive. "Well, I already ate it now. There's no way to undo it. Besides, that salmon was kind of tasteless. You should complain to the restaurant." Lucas, who is normally the most patient person in the world, completely lost his patience. His voice rose several tones. "You can't just take other people's food. This is unbelievable. I was looking forward to this food all week." "Wow. How rude," Tiffany responded, acting shocked and putting her hand on her chest in a theatrical gesture. "You don't need to yell at me over a misunderstanding. What aggressiveness is this? Honestly, Lucas, I thought you were more mature." She left the office all indignant, leaving Lucas without lunch, without money to order another, because he had spent everything on the poke bowl she devoured, and on top of that, being treated as if he were the villain of the story. It was the most impressive performance of manipulation I had ever witnessed. In a matter of seconds, she transformed Lucas from victim to aggressor, and still came out as the offended party. That night, while driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. Zoe humiliated, Lucas exploited and still made the villain, and me, always watching silently, always avoiding confrontation, always being the polite person who doesn't want to cause problems. But mainly, I couldn't forget Lucas's expression when he realized he wouldn't have lunch. He had worked all morning without eating anything, waiting for that poke bowl. And the way Tiffany managed to make him feel guilty for being upset about his own loss was diabolical. I arrived home decided. My boyfriend David works as a chef at an Asian fusion restaurant downtown, and I knew exactly how to use this connection to my advantage. It was time for Tiffany to meet a version of Nicole that she hadn't seen yet. The version that doesn't accept being passed over or seeing good people being exploited. I called David that same night. "Love, I need a favor. Do you guys still give discounts for corporate groups?" When he confirmed, I smiled for the first time in weeks. Finally, I had a plan that could work. The next morning, I sent an email to 8 people from the office, including Tiffany. "Guys, how about we organize a get-together on Friday? I found an incredible restaurant that gives discounts for groups. It'll be at Sakura Fusion at 7 at night. The discount is on me." When some closer friends warned me about including Tiffany on the list, I just smiled mysteriously. "Trust me," I said. "This time will be different." I chose Sakura Fusion strategically. It wasn't just because of the connection with David, but because of the perfect location for my plan. The restaurant is on the 22nd floor of a commercial building, with a single entrance controlled by elevators. Once up there, it's practically impossible to leave discreetly without being noticed by everyone at the table. Besides, the dishes cost between $35 and $65 each. It wasn't exorbitant for a sophisticated place, but expensive enough to make any escape attempt embarrassing. And David had guaranteed me a private table at the back of the restaurant, away from the main movement and, more importantly, away from any discreet exit. During the week, I observed Tiffany at the office with a new perspective. Now that I knew what to look for, I could see all the small signs of her manipulative behavior. The way she always positioned herself away from the bill at restaurants. How she mysteriously needed to answer important calls when it was time to split expenses. The calculated way she made her emergencies arise. David helped me plan every detail. "Are you sure you don't want to tell me what the complete plan is?" he asked during the week, curious about my sudden determination to organize this dinner. "Just trust me," I replied, "and make sure our table is as isolated as possible. I need it to be impossible to leave without everyone seeing." On Thursday, Tiffany even tried to find out more details about the dinner. "Nicole, what kind of food do they serve at this place?" she asked with an innocent smile that I now recognized as calculated. "Is it very expensive? I don't want it to be an embarrassing situation for anyone." The irony of her concern about embarrassing situations almost made me laugh. "It's Asian fusion," I replied casually. "The prices are reasonable for the quality. David got a good discount for corporate groups. You'll love it." Friday finally arrived. I spent the whole day with butterflies in my stomach, but determined. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes before the scheduled time to confirm all the details with David. He had reserved the exact table I asked for, in the most remote corner, with a view of the city, but strategically positioned so that anyone leaving would have to pass through the entire restaurant area. "The bill will be presented as you asked," David assured me, "and our staff is instructed about the situation. No one will accept excuses about cards with problems or apps being down." The group started arriving at 7 sharp. First came Lucas and Zoe, still a bit wary about Tiffany's presence at the dinner. "Are you sure it's a good idea?" Lucas whispered when he arrived. "Just watch," I replied. "This time will be different." Then came Sarah, our account manager, accompanied by Miguel and Amanda from the finance department. Last came James and his boyfriend Kevin, who also works with us in the IT department. Tiffany was the last to show up, obviously. She entered the restaurant as if she owned the place, wearing a black dress that clearly cost more than my monthly rent and shoes I was sure I had seen in the Louboutin window for more than $1,000. "What a beautiful place, Nicole," she exclaimed, looking around with genuine approval. "You really have good taste. And what an incredible view. It must have cost a fortune to get this reservation." In the first 30 minutes, everything went normally. We talked about work, about weekend plans, about the new Korean series everyone was watching. Tiffany was in her element, telling stories about her latest shopping trips and a trip to Napa Valley she had taken the previous month. "I spent a fortune on wines," she laughed, as if spending fortunes were the most natural thing in the world. "But when you find a 1998 Cabernet Sauvignon, you can't let it pass, right?" Then came time to order food. I watched fascinated while everyone carefully studied the menu, clearly worried about prices. Lucas opted for a teriyaki chicken dish for $38. Zoe chose a salmon salad for $32. Sarah and the others made similar choices, all budget-conscious. Tiffany, on the other hand, seemed to be shopping at a free buffet. "I want the premium sashimi combo," she announced without hesitation, pointing to the most expensive item in the raw fish section, and also the special tempura shrimp as an appetizer. I discreetly consulted the menu. The sashimi cost $58. The shrimp, 42. And how about we order sake for the table? She continued, already calling the waiter without consulting anyone. The premium one? Do you have Junmai Daiginjo? Before anyone could politely protest, she had ordered a bottle of sake that cost $85. It's on the house, guys, to celebrate our friendship and this wonderful place Nicole found. Of course, on the house meant it would be divided among all of us, raising each person's individual bill by another $10. During dinner, I watched fascinated while Tiffany executed her usual performance. But this time, I was prepared. She completely dominated the conversation, talking nonstop about herself, her apartment redecorating plans, her ideas for the next Caribbean vacation. I'm thinking about Turks and Caicos, she was saying, gesturing with chopsticks full of $58 sashimi. Or maybe the Bahamas. Those all-inclusive resorts are divine, right? Of course they cost $3,000 per week, but you can't put a price on relaxation. She also monopolized the shared dishes I had suggested for the group. We had ordered edamame, gyoza, and a tataki appetizer to share. Tiffany consumed at least half of everything, as if it were her personal meal. Wow, what wonderful gyoza, she exclaimed, taking the fourth in a row. You guys have to try them. Oh, wait, are they finished? What a shame. Her veracity was impressive. She ate as if she hadn't seen food in days, which was ironic considering she frequented expensive restaurants regularly. The difference is that this time she was really paying for everything she consumed. When desserts were served and the atmosphere was more relaxed, I discreetly signaled to the waiter. It was time for the most important part of my plan. David had instructed the staff on how to proceed, and everything was working perfectly. The waiter approached and announced, "Excuse me, everyone. The bill came to $580 for 8 people. That's $72.50 per person. Do you prefer to split on card or each pay individually?" It was then that Tiffany immediately stood up, like a conditioned reflex. "Oh, guys, I'm feeling sick," she announced dramatically, bringing her hand to her forehead in a gesture she had used dozens of times before. "I think it was something I ate. Must have been that salmon. Sometimes raw fish doesn't agree with me. I'll just go to the bathroom to freshen up a bit." She left hurriedly, leaving only her Prada bag on the chair, a move also calculated to show she would obviously return soon. I waited exactly 5 minutes, timing it on my phone before acting. "Guys, she must be really feeling sick," I said, feigning concern. "I'll see if she's okay." Carefully, I opened her bag in front of everyone. It wasn't invasion of privacy when done publicly and with plausible justification. I found only basic items: expensive makeup, imported gum, brand perfume, and the Audi keys. No wallet in sight. "How strange," I commented loud enough for everyone to hear. "There's no wallet here. Maybe she left it in the car?" I took the keys discreetly. "I'll see if it's in her car. Maybe she forgot it." Actually, I had a very different plan for those keys. That night, while driving home after the most revealing dinner of my life, I couldn't stop thinking about how everything had unfolded exactly as I expected. Tiffany had shown her true colors once again, but this time I was prepared. My boyfriend David had asked me during the week if I was sure about the plan, and now I knew the answer was definitely yes. It was time for Tiffany to learn that some people don't accept being exploited indefinitely. What she didn't know is that I had documented everything, not just her behavior that night, but months of manipulation patterns. And now I had concrete evidence of the luxurious lifestyle she maintained at the expense of others. The game had changed, and for the first time in a long time, I was in control of the situation. I left the restaurant and headed to the parking lot with Tiffany's keys in hand. My heart was racing, but I felt more determined than ever. I wasn't doing anything illegal, just checking if her wallet was in the car, like any good colleague would do. Tiffany's silver Audi was parked very close to the entrance, as always. She had the habit of arriving early to places just to get the best spots. I used the keys to open the trunk, and what I found exceeded all my expectations. There were at least 6 shopping bags from expensive stores scattered inside: Nordstrom, Saks Fifth Avenue, Coach, and even a small bag from Tiffany & Co. Clothes with tags still attached, brand shoes in untouched boxes, and even some jewelry packaged as gifts. Quickly, I started photographing everything with my phone, documenting each expensive item Tiffany had bought recently. A $400 Theory dress, $600 Jimmy Choo shoes, a new $800 Coach bag. The amount of luxury in there was obscene. But what really shocked me were the receipts that were in the bags. I took some and photographed them too. The purchases had been made that same week, spread between Monday and Thursday. The total I managed to document exceeded $2,000 in just 4 days. One receipt in particular caught my attention. $300 spent at a spa the previous Tuesday, exactly the day she had forgotten her wallet at lunch with the team. Another receipt showed a $500 purchase at Sephora on Thursday, the same day she asked Lucas to pay for her drinks because her app was down. I returned to the restaurant with enough evidence to confront Tiffany, but she still hadn't returned from the bathroom. Another 10 minutes passed before she appeared, with a sickly expression that was pure theatrical performance. "Sorry, guys, I'm really feeling sick," she began her usual act, one hand on her stomach and another on her forehead. "I think it was food poisoning. That salmon must have been spoiled. I'll have to go home immediately." She made a dramatic pause, looking around the table with an expression of someone fighting nausea. "Can I transfer my share tomorrow, or at the beginning of the week? I promise I won't forget." It was the same promise she had been making for months, and never kept. I calmly placed my phone on the table, with the screen facing up showing photos of the luxury purchases. "Interesting," I said, keeping my voice serene and controlled. "Because from what I saw in your car, you spent more than $2,000 on shopping this week. I'm sure $72.50 won't break your budget." The silence at the table was deafening. You could hear the restaurant's ambient music and the distant noise of conversations from other tables, but our table was completely mute. Everyone looked alternately at me, at the phone, and at Tiffany. Tiffany became visibly pale, but tried to maintain the farce. Her voice, however, had lost its theatrical confidence. Those purchases were gifts. I was buying for other people, for my mother, for my sister." I swiped the screen and showed a specific photo of a receipt. "This $400 theory dress is in medium size, exactly your size. And this receipt shows it was paid with your personal credit card. Not as a gift?" I showed another receipt. "And here, $300 spent at the spa last Tuesday, the same day you forgot your wallet at lunch and Lucas had to pay your share." Tiffany's expression quickly changed from pale to red with anger. She realized she had been completely cornered, with no possible escape. "These Jimmy Choo shoes," I continued, showing another photo, "also in your size. And this Coach bag in the photo is exactly like the one you used yesterday at the office." Without escape and with 7 people looking directly at her, Tiffany finally gave up the performance. With hands trembling from anger and humiliation, she took her phone and opened the bank transfer app. $72.50, she muttered through clenched teeth, typing the amount with an aggressiveness that made the phone shake in her hands. The transfer appeared on my phone instantly. For the first time in months, Tiffany had actually paid her share, and in front of witnesses. The rest of the dinner ended in uncomfortable silence. Tiffany remained seated but didn't say another word. The others talked in low voices, clearly processing what they had witnessed. When we finally got up to leave, Tiffany was the first to go, without saying goodbye to anyone. She simply took her bag and left the restaurant with quick, hard steps. "Wow, Nicole," Sarah whispered while we waited for the elevator. "How long have you known about all this?" The following Monday, Tiffany initiated a subtle but devastating defamation campaign. I already expected a reaction, but the speed and intensity with which she acted surprised me. It was as if she had spent the entire weekend planning her counteroffensive. She started early, arriving at the office before everyone else and positioning herself strategically in the kitchen, where she knew people would pass to get coffee. When Amanda arrived, Tiffany was already there, with red eyes as if she had been crying. "Hi, Amanda," she said with a fragile voice that I immediately recognized as another performance. "Do you have a minute? I need to vent to someone about what happened on Friday." Throughout the morning, I watched Tiffany execute the same scene with different people. For each colleague who appeared, she told a slightly different version of the story, always painting herself as the victim of a cruel and humiliating situation. "Nicole attacked me publicly," I heard her whispering to Marcus from accounting. "She violated my privacy, went through my personal things, and humiliated me in front of everyone. I've never felt so embarrassed in my life." For Rebecca from HR, the story had other details. "I was really feeling sick, with suspected food poisoning, and even so she forced me to pay. She didn't show even a bit of empathy or compassion. And for Tom from marketing, Tom," she added, "the worst part is that I'm going through some financial difficulties that I prefer to keep private. My father is sick, and I have many medical expenses. I thought she would understand, but instead I was cruelly attacked." Tiffany's narrative was brilliantly constructed. She mixed elements of truth with convincing lies, always positioning herself as the vulnerable party. She painted our confrontation as an unprovoked attack by a cruel person against someone who was genuinely in need. Most impressive was how she could modulate her voice and expression for each person. With men, she used a more fragile, almost childish tone. With women, she was more indignant, appealing to female solidarity. With supervisors, she emphasized issues of professionalism and hostile work environment. Honestly, she told Jennifer from Communications, I thought Nicole was more mature. I never imagined she could be so envious and petty. Just because I have a better car than hers? When Lucas told me about the rumors that were spreading, I felt a mixture of anger and admiration for Tiffany's strategy. She had completely transformed the narrative in less than 48 hours. Some people are starting to question what really happened on Friday, Lucas warned me during lunch. She's saying you invaded her privacy and that it was all a misunderstanding. And that she's going through financial difficulties, added Zoe, who had heard the version of the story told to Rebecca. Like, her father is sick and she has many medical bills to pay. I knew I needed to prepare adequately for this war of narratives. Tiffany had proven to be a master at manipulation, and I couldn't underestimate her ability to turn the situation in her favor. I spent the entire week meticulously collecting evidence, like a detective building a case. First, I recovered all the screenshots of old messages where Tiffany promised to transfer later but never did. I had at least 15 different WhatsApp conversations over 6 months. Then I dove into her social media. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Everything was public, and it was a goldmine of contradictory evidence. Her posts showed a lifestyle completely incompatible with someone in financial difficulties. There were photos of expensive trips, a weekend in Napa Valley in September, a getaway to Miami in August, a spa resort in Scottsdale in July. Each trip easily cost more than $2,000, based on the hotels and restaurants she tagged in the locations. The restaurant photos were especially revealing. Dinners at sophisticated places at least 3 times a week, always with expensive dishes and premium wines. In a photo from August, she was holding a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne that cost more than $300. Celebrating another finished project, said the caption. Life is too short not to give ourselves the little luxuries we deserve. Blessed are stars, work hard, aren't play hard. I also collected written testimonies from Zoe about the brownie incident and from Lucas about the stolen poke bowl. Both wrote detailed accounts of how they were treated, including the exact words Tiffany had used. Zoe's account was particularly touching. She not only ate my brownies without asking, but criticized me in front of other colleagues, saying they were dry and that I should use better ingredients. I had woken up at 5 a.m. to make something special for everyone, using a family recipe and expensive ingredients I brought from Oregon. I felt humiliated and devalued. Lucas was more direct. Tiffany simply took my food and ate it, then refused to pay or order another dish. When I confronted her politely, she made me look like the villain of the situation. It was pure and simple manipulation. I created a detailed list of all the events where Tiffany had avoided paying, with dates, approximate amounts, and witnesses present. The list had more than 20 different incidents over 6 months. Through a mutual friend on LinkedIn, I also discovered information about her behavior at her previous job. Apparently, Tiffany had done exactly the same thing at the public relations company where she worked before. According to my source, she was known for constantly forgetting her wallet and always finding excuses not to pay her share at social events. She did the same thing there, my friend told me over the phone, always borrowing money for lunch and never returning it. When she left the company, she owed at least 5 different people. By the end of the week, I had a complete dossier on Tiffany's behavior pattern. It wasn't just about the restaurant or about money. It was about a lifestyle built on top of systematic exploitation of others' goodwill. During the happy hour the following Friday, Tiffany decided to execute her final revenge plan. She had chosen the perfect moment. End of the week, relaxed environment, and 15 colleagues present, including some people who weren't at the dinner and had only heard her version of the facts. She waited until everyone had at least one drink and the atmosphere was lively. Then, as if it were a sudden impulse, she asked for everyone's attention. "Guys," she said, lightly tapping the table to get attention, "I know it's not appropriate to talk about this here, but I need to clarify some things about what happened last week." The bar became quieter, with everyone turning to her. It was exactly the type of audience she wanted, a group large enough for maximum impact. "I was attacked and publicly humiliated by Nicole," she began, her voice trembling with apparently genuine emotion. "In front of you, my friends and work colleagues, and this over a misunderstanding about a restaurant bill." She paused for dramatic effect, looking around to capture everyone's attention. "I was really sick that night," she continued, feeling bad with what was clearly food poisoning. "And even so, instead of receiving support and understanding, I was embarrassed and attacked." Her tears seemed genuine as she spoke. What hurts me most is that I'm going through a difficult time financially. My father has health problems and I have many medical expenses. I thought I could count on my colleagues' understanding, but instead, she didn't finish the sentence, letting the silence carry the implication that she had been treated cruelly and insensitively. It was a masterful performance. She had transformed a confrontation about manipulative behavior into a story of bullying against a vulnerable person. Several people at the table seemed genuinely moved, especially those who didn't know the full context. I let her finish completely before standing up calmly. My heart was racing, but my voice came out firm and controlled. "Since we're talking publicly about this," I said, connecting my phone to the bar's projector that I had borrowed earlier, "I think everyone deserves to see the complete picture." What happened next was one of the most intense experiences of my life. I had prepared a presentation that I mentally called Tiffany's Behavior Timeline, and I was about to show 6 months of evidence to 15 work colleagues. The first screen showed photos of the luxury purchases I had taken in the restaurant parking lot. "These photos were taken in Tiffany's car last Friday," I began, keeping my voice calm and factual. "More than $2,000 in purchases made in the same week she claimed to be going through financial difficulties." I showed each individual receipt, highlighting dates and amounts. Tuesday, $300 at the spa. Wednesday, $800 on a Coach bag. Thursday, $500 at Sephora. The second part was screenshots of WhatsApp conversations. Here we have 15 different conversations over 6 months where Tiffany promised to transfer later and never did. I read some of the most revealing messages. "Oh guys, my bank app is bugged. I'll transfer tomorrow for sure." Or, "I forgot my wallet in the car, but I promise I'll transfer on Monday." All these promises were never kept, I continued. And meanwhile, the third section was devastating. Screenshots from Tiffany's social media showing her luxurious lifestyle. Photos at expensive restaurants, trips to resorts, purchases at designer stores. Each image was dated and accompanied by the approximate value based on the locations and items shown. "This dinner at the French restaurant cost at least $200 per person," I explained, showing a photo where she was holding a wine bottle I had researched afterward. "It cost $150. This trip to Napa Valley in September, based on the hotel she tagged in the location, cost at least $1,500. The fourth part was testimonies from Zoe and Lucas. I read the complete account of the brownie incident and the stolen poke bowl, allowing everyone to hear exactly how Tiffany had treated our colleagues. After eating half of the brownies that Zoe had made especially for her birthday, I read, Tiffany said, and I quote, "They were kind of dry anyway. You should use a better recipe." You could hear some people whispering, "Wow," and "How cruel," while I read. The fifth section was about the behavior pattern at her previous job. Through a reliable source, I discovered that Tiffany did exactly the same thing at the company where she worked before. Multiple people reported borrowed money for lunch that was never returned and a consistent pattern of avoiding paying her share at social events. Finally, I showed the complete chronological list, 23 documented incidents in 6 months, with dates, approximate amounts, and witnesses present. The presentation lasted 10 minutes and the silence in the bar was total. All allegations of financial difficulties were contradicted by visual evidence of extravagant spending. Each story of misunderstandings was contextualized within a clear and systematic pattern. When I finished, I looked directly at Tiffany. She was pale as a ghost, without words to refute such concrete and comprehensive evidence. "This is the information I have," I concluded. "Each person can draw their own conclusions." Confronted with irrefutable evidence and the presence of 15 witnesses, Tiffany had no way to maintain her victim narrative. There was no possible excuse to explain how someone in financial difficulties could spend thousands of dollars on luxuries while systematically exploiting work colleagues. The group's reaction was immediate and unanimous. There was no discussion or debate. The evidence spoke for itself. Sarah, our manager, was the first to speak. "Tiffany," she said in a tone I had never heard her use, "this is absolutely unacceptable. This behavior stops here, now." Marcus, who had been one of the most sympathetic to Tiffany's victim version, shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe you manipulated us this way." Tiffany tried one last desperate defense. "You guys don't understand," she began, but her voice had lost all theatrical conviction. "Things aren't as simple as that." "What's not simple?" interrupted Jennifer. "Spending $800 on a bag and then saying you can't pay $70 for dinner? Or humiliating Zoe after eating her brownies?" added James, visibly irritated. From that moment on, Tiffany was officially banned from all office social events. It wasn't a formal declaration, but a tacit and collective understanding. No one would invite her to anything anymore. No one would accept her excuses anymore. And no one would be exploited by her manipulation anymore. In the following days, it was fascinating to observe how the office dynamics changed. Colleagues who had been silently affected by Tiffany began sharing their own experiences, now that they felt safe to speak. Rebecca from HR told me that Tiffany had borrowed $20 from her 3 months ago for emergency gas and never returned it. Tom from marketing revealed that she always asked for rides to events and never offered help with gas. Amanda mentioned that Tiffany had forgotten to pay her share in the collective gift for our boss's birthday. I always found it strange, said Miguel during lunch, but I never wanted to seem petty complaining about $20 or $30 here and there. That's exactly it, I replied. She counted on our politeness and our reluctance to create conflict over small amounts. But when you add it all up, it was impressive to discover how widespread the problem was. Tiffany had affected practically the entire team in some way, always using the same method. Amounts small enough not to justify a confrontation, but large enough to accumulate significant benefit for her over time. Lucas calculated that, just in the events he remembered, he had paid more than $200 extra covering Tiffany's share throughout the year. When you put it on paper, he said, it's kind of scary how I was exploited. Zoe confessed that she had started avoiding social events because she felt uncomfortable with Tiffany's behavior, but didn't know how to address the situation. I thought it was just me, she said. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. 3 weeks after the presentation at the bar, Tiffany requested a transfer to another department. Officially, it was for new professional growth opportunities. In practice, everyone knew she could no longer function in an environment where her behavior had been completely exposed. The transfer request was quickly approved. Our manager, who had learned about the entire situation through Sarah, seemed relieved to solve the problem without having to take formal disciplinary measures. On Tiffany's last day in our department, she cleaned her desk in silence. There was no farewell party, no collective gifts, no speeches about, "We'll miss you." She simply took her things and left. Some people felt uncomfortable with how definitive the ostracism was, but most agreed that the consequences were appropriate for the behavior. As Sarah put it, actions have consequences. She created this situation with her own choices. The office environment improved dramatically after Tiffany's departure. People returned to organizing social events without fear of being exploited. Friday happy hour became fun again instead of stressful. Group lunches flowed naturally without drama when it came time to split the bill. More importantly, we inadvertently created a healthy precedent. Everyone now felt authorized to confront exploitative behaviors before they became bigger problems. The group had learned that good manners didn't mean accepting being exploited indefinitely. I became a kind of silent heroine of the group, the person who finally had the courage to face behavior that everyone knew was wrong, but no one had effectively confronted. But what made me most proud was having protected genuinely good people like Zoe and Lucas from continuing to be exploited. The most important lesson we all learned was that sometimes the only way to deal with people who systematically exploit others' goodwill is to confront them with concrete evidence and real consequences. Politeness and patience are virtues, but they shouldn't be weapons used against us. 6 months after this entire situation, I can say that my life changed in ways I never expected. Not just because I managed to get rid of Tiffany, but because I discovered a version of myself that I didn't know existed. For years, I was that person who avoided conflicts at any cost. I preferred to be exploited rather than create uncomfortable situations. I thought being polite meant accepting anything others did, even when it was clearly wrong. The Tiffany case taught me that there's a huge difference between being kind and being a doormat. Genuine kindness comes from a place of strength and choice, not fear of confrontation. When we allow people to exploit us because of our politeness, we're not being noble. We're being complicit with destructive behavior. Most importantly, I learned that when we don't confront toxic people, we're not just allowing them to hurt us. We're allowing them to hurt other people too. Zoe didn't deserve to be humiliated. Lucas didn't deserve to be exploited. And how many other people had Tiffany affected in previous jobs because no one ever confronted her adequately? In the following months, I continued organizing dinners with the group, but now with a completely different dynamic. People felt free to be genuine, without fear of being exploited. Our events became more frequent and more fun because everyone knew they were in a safe and respectful environment. Lucas returned to being the kind and generous guy he always was, but now with healthy boundaries. He learned to say no when necessary and not feel guilty about protecting his own resources and well-being. Zoe flourished completely. Without Tiffany to undermine her confidence, she became one of the most creative and collaborative people on the team. She even started bringing her culinary creations regularly to the office, knowing she would be genuinely appreciated. Sarah, our manager, confessed to me months later that she had noticed Tiffany's behavior, but didn't know how to address it without concrete evidence. "You did what I should have done as a leader," she said. "You taught me the importance of documenting problems and confronting them directly." Most interesting is that our experience became a kind of legend in the office. New employees eventually heard the story, always told respectfully, focusing on lessons learned. And this created a culture where exploitative behaviors were quickly identified and stopped. A few months later, I received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from a woman named Jessica who had worked with Tiffany at her previous company. "Hi, Nicole. I know this might seem strange, but a mutual friend told me about the situation with Tiffany at your office. I wanted to tell you that you did the right thing. She did the same thing to us for almost a year before being transferred. No one ever had the courage to confront her adequately. Thank you for finally doing it." The message made me realize that Tiffany probably had a behavior pattern that extended for years, maybe decades. How many work colleagues had been affected? How many genuinely good people had been exploited and humiliated? This gave me a sense of closure I didn't expect. It wasn't about revenge or making Tiffany pay for what she had done. It was about interrupting a destructive cycle that had probably affected dozens of people over the years. David, my boyfriend, observed the entire transformation up close. "You're different," he commented one day. "More confident, more assertive. It's like you found your voice." He was right. Confronting Tiffany had given me access to a part of myself that I had suppressed for years. The part that knew how to defend what was right. That wasn't afraid of uncomfortable situations when necessary. That could protect vulnerable people from predators. I started applying these lessons to other areas of life. At work, I became more willing to question decisions that didn't make sense and propose alternatives. In personal relationships, I established clearer boundaries and stopped accepting behaviors that bothered me just to avoid conflict. A year later, I received a promotion to team manager. My boss specifically mentioned my ability to handle difficult situations in a mature and effective way as one of the decision factors. As for Tiffany, I learned through occasional comments that she continued the same pattern in the new department, but for a much shorter time. People already knew her reputation, and when she tried to repeat the same behaviors, she was quickly confronted. Eventually, she left the company completely. I didn't feel joy about this, nor satisfaction from revenge. Actually, I felt genuine sadness for someone who had chosen to build a life based on exploiting others instead of developing genuine relationship and contribution skills. But I also felt proud of having contributed to creating an environment where people like Zoe and Lucas could prosper without fear of being exploited, where genuine kindness was valued and protected, not exploited. Today, when I organize social events, I'm always attentive to group dynamics and behaviors that might indicate exploitation or manipulation. Not in a paranoid way, but in a protective way. I learned that creating healthy environments is active work, not something that happens automatically. I also became an informal mentor for people dealing with similar situations. Several times, colleagues from other departments came to ask me for advice on how to deal with manipulative or exploitative people on their teams. My answer is always the same. Document everything, collect evidence, and confront with facts, not emotions. But mainly remember that protecting your own dignity and that of other people isn't cruelty, it's responsibility. The story with Tiffany taught me that there's a fundamental difference between people who make occasional mistakes and people who systematically exploit others. We all forget wallets sometimes or go through temporary financial difficulties. But when there's a consistent pattern combined with a lifestyle that contradicts claims of difficulty, you're dealing with something very different. And Nicole? Well, I continued organizing dinners with the group. But now I knew exactly how to identify and deal with freeloaders before they could cause damage to the group. More importantly, I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is protect good people from people who want to hurt them. The most valuable lesson from all this was discovering that you can be a fundamentally good and kind person without being a doormat, that establishing healthy boundaries doesn't make you cruel or petty, it makes you responsible, and that protecting your own dignity and that of other people isn't optional when you truly care about creating a better world. Today, when I see similar situations happening around me, I don't hesitate to act. Not aggressively or vindictively, but firmly and based on facts. Because I learned that silence in the face of exploitation isn't virtue, it's complicity. And that's my story about how an apparently ordinary person discovered they had enough strength to face an experienced manipulator and protect an entire group of genuinely good people. It wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about dignity, mutual respect, and the courage to do the right thing even when it's uncomfortable. And that was the story of how Nicole discovered that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat, and that sometimes protecting good people requires courage to confront toxic behaviors. What did you think of Nicole's attitude? Did she go too far or do exactly what needed to be done? Leave your opinion in the comments. And tell me, have you ever been through a similar situation? Have you ever had to deal with that person who always forgets their wallet when it's time to pay? How did you react? If you liked this story and want to see more content about toxic relationships, emotional manipulation, and how to establish healthy boundaries, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Next week, we're going to talk about warning signs in friendships and how to identify people who only show up when they need something. Don't miss it. And remember, you deserve to be surrounded by people who respect and value you. Never accept less than that. Until next time, and thank you for watching.